Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee workshop. Got something over here on my computer I want to show you. I have a photograph of a pool shed that we found down on the island of Nantucket, and we were really impressed with some of the details. We like the proportions, the pitch of the roof, this little trellis that goes around this vertical window, and this homemade door. I don't think we need a big slider like this, but the rest of the details are great. So today we're going to build our version of a storage shed. We're going to be busy, so stick around. That's next, right here in the new Yankee workshop. Well, the first thing I did was pick the location for our shed, and then I put in these batter boards, a couple at each corner, and then strung lines, which gave me an 8-foot deep, 12-foot wide rectangle, and all the lines are perfectly level. Then I dug down, put in some crushed stone, and then these bearing points. There are 6 bearing points. Now, this is a temporary location for the shed. If it were permanent, I would have installed a footing and poured concrete tubes and anchored the building to those, and also checked with the building inspector for any special requirements. The next thing to do was to start framing the floor. Now, you can see here there's a double 2x10 along the front edge, and there's also one along the back edge. What I did first is installed this ledger strip. It's a piece of 1.5 inch by 2 inch stock nailed to that first joist. Then I set my actual cross joist on top of that, nailed them through the ends, and then doubled up the corners. Everything's been checked for square. Then I installed a row of blocks down the center, which will be a bearing point for the plywood. Now, there's one more block to install at the end. And it's a good idea to wear gloves when handling this material. Now, you'll note that I'm using hot-dipped galvanized nails with this pressure-treated material. If I use common nails, they'll corrode. These are the best to use. The sheathing for our floor is 3/4 inch thick pressure-treated plywood. And that will also get nailed with hot-dipped galvanized nails, this time 8-penny. Now, in only a few minutes, I've been able to lay out this first wall. It's called the gable end. We're going to have to build 2 of them. The platform is a great surface to build any wall because it's flat and square. I was able to snap lines locating each stud of the gable end and even the rafter locations. And from those lines and some measurements, I'm able to make the various parts. Here's one of the corners where the front of the back wall will meet it. Couple studs with blocks in between. Single studs the rest of the way across. I've got this piece of strapping to make sure the studs line up 16 inches on center. The top of all the studs are notched for the rafter, and when I put the rafter on and nail it, it'll be flush with the stud, giving me a nice strong connection. Now, all these measurements, as well as all the other measurements for the shed, will be in the plan, which you can also obtain with a video, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. Now I'm ready to complete nailing it off. However, before I use any power tools, I want to talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now, these 2x4 blocks are going to pick up the seam in the plywood that we'll be using for these walls. Now let's cover this gable end frame, and for that I'm using 1/2 inch thick MDO plywood. Here's the paper coating that's on both sides. The outside has already been pre-primed, and because I can only get sheets that are 8 feet long, I've cut a bevel joint here, so when I complete the sheathing of this side, the next sheet will lap over and water will shed away rather than running in. Now let me show you how I cut that bevel. I flip the sheet over, I set up a straight edge, and I'm simply going to use my circular saw, which is set at 45 degrees. Now where the two sheets of plywood come together, I like to lay in a nice bead of caulk. It'll keep the water out and it'll also act like a glue. For the nails, I'm using 8-penny galvanized common nails, and I want to just set them flush with the surface. These are going to show when it's all finished. No rosebuds though, just nice and flush. I'll use these salvage pieces for the other gable end. With my pneumatic nailer, I'm using a 6-penny coated nail so it won't rust, being careful to set them flush. Well, wouldn't you know, just as I'm ready to finish up this gable end, it starts to rain. So we'll cover it up for the night and continue tomorrow. Well, good morning. The rain stopped last night, but then it got dark. So this morning I'm continuing with this gable. I installed these 3/4-inch plywood spacers, which are going to receive the trim boards, and it will also provide for a gap for the corner boards to slip under the trim. Now I'm putting on these battens for the board and batten effect that we want. 1.5-inch wide, 1/2-inch thick cedar that I ripped down. I've laid them out and I've put a bead of construction adhesive, and I'm going to attach it with some brads. I don't want the nails to penetrate through. Okay, well, the whole idea with this shed is to make it as maintenance-free as possible. So the MDO plywood, which was pre-primed, will only require a coat of paint or stain every several years. And for the trim, I'm using a synthetic material instead of wood. This is an extruded PVC product. You can rip it into any size you want, work it with woodworking tools. It'll never rot, and the insects don't like it. I'm simply going to attach it with some 8-penny nails. I want to make sure I hold it above my rafter 5/8 of an inch. So I've made this little shim. Okay, now for the joint, for wood I would use caulking, but for the PVC I use a PVC glue. This is a water-based glue, requires no primer, simply spread it on both sides of the joint and put it together. This cement actually welds the pieces together, much like a plumber would do with his plastic pipe. This next piece will create a shadow line on the gable end. I'm going to hold it flush with the trim board that I already put on, and as with all the nails I'm installing, I'm making an effort to keep them absolutely flush. Okay, now I'm going to trim off the excess of that shadow line cleat with a handsaw. Boy, I like the way this material works with hand tools. That's one gable, let's build another one. Okay, we're gaining on it now. The back wall couldn't be simpler. 2x4s, 16 inches on center, some more 1/2-inch MDO plywood, and some batten strips. Well, it's starting to get heavy, so I better call in some help. Hey, Wade, you got a minute? It's always nice to have a neighbor who works nights. All right, nice and easy. Stand it up. Now it's going to start to pull out a little bit. Okay, nice and easy. All right, how's it look on that line down that end? I think it's good. All right, I'm going to just pull it in and get a spike in there. Okay. Now this is a handy tool, sort of a modified PV. I picked it up years ago. I can't remember exactly where. Right to the line. Nice and easy. All right, it's going to start sliding a little bit. Okay. All right, go ahead. Okay, now what we got to do is slide it around the corner here. Oops. All right, I want to bring it right to the line, tight to that other wall. Now I'll just pull the corner together in both directions and nail off the stud. All right, easy. Okay, all right, same thing as the other side. Just slide it. Thanks, Wade. Well, here are some of the elements for the front wall. Over here, we're going to have a nice wide door, and over here, we're going to have a narrow window. I like to work on the openings first, so I attach my jack studs to my regular studs, making sure I nail them all nice and flush. The better I put the frame together, the better everything's going to fit. At the top of each opening, I'm going to have a header, and here's the parts for the one over the window. And I want to make the thickness of the header the same as the width of my studs. So I sandwich a piece of 1/2-inch plywood between the two pieces. And again, I want to nail everything very accurately and flush. Of course, you could frame this wall vertically one piece at a time, but it's a lot easier to use this deck as a workbench. Now this side is not bad at all, just studs. This turnbuckle, which I've attached to a 2x4, allows me to plumb up and square the wall before I sheath it. All right, that's good. For the front wall, I'm sheathing it with 1/2-inch CDX plywood. No need for MDO on this wall because we're going to cover this with wood shingles. Okay, with the front wall sheathed and all the corners tied together, I've strung a line on both the front and back walls. I've spaced it using some scraps of plywood, and I've installed another turnbuckle. And what I want to do is bring that wall to the line. Then I know that it's perfectly straight. That's it. Now it's time for the ridge pole, which is a 2x12. It's going to sit in some pockets on each end on top of the stud, and you see I've added some pieces of plywood to act like a gusset. I've already done the layout for the rafters, so it'll be easy to locate them and nail them in place. Well, now it's time for the roof rafters, and I've pre-cut them. And if you look at a rafter, you see this cut at the top. That's the ridge cut. It's plumb to the side of the ridge pole. Down here at the bottom, this is the plumb cut, and this is the heel cut. They simply sit on top of the wall and get nailed, toe-nailed from each side. Now this little overhang is important. It determines where the fascia board will go, and it keeps the fascia board far enough out so that my corner boards will slip under it. Now it's important when installing these rafters to alternate sides so as to prevent pushing the ridge out of alignment. Now I'm installing some blocks between the rafters. They've been beveled at a 45-degree on the top, and what that will do will add extra support for the fascia board and the edge of the roof system. Well, here's the fascia board. It's a piece of that PVC material, beveled on the top edge at 45 degrees. I'll nail it in place with some galvanized nails, holding it flush to the top of the rafters. Well, just in the nick of time, we're starting to put the sheathing on the roof. Looks like we're about to get a shower. Well, there are a couple things we can do while it's raining. I need to make up a window unit. I purchased the sash, it's a casement sash, and I'm making my own frame using the same PVC material. Here are the jambs, here's the sill, which I made out of 2 pieces glued together, the headpiece, and some stops. I'll connect all the joints with a little bit of glue and brad them together. I made the rabbets using the table saw with a dado, just like I would have done if I were using wood. Here you can see the seam where I glued 2 pieces together with the PVC glue to make the sill. When that's painted, you'll never see that joint. Now I'm ready for the stops, and they will actually hold the window in place. Once again, I'm using the PVC glue, a little bit on each side, and I line it up. Line up the piece. This PVC glue sets a little bit slower than the type that the plumbers use, so I'm just using a couple clamps to hold it in place until the glue sets. Here's one of the casing pieces, and I've beveled the bottom at 15 degrees so that it fits tight to the sill. Now I'm holding the inside edge of the casing flush to the stop. Now finally, the head casing gets glued on, and this unit should be waterproof for the life of the building. Well, it's still a little damp out there, so let's make some corner boards. Now, the corner boards are made up of 1 piece of 4.5-inch wide stock and 1 piece of 3 3/4 inch stock, so it makes the corner look even. Now, with wood, the problem is that the boards often cup and the joint opens up along that corner. But we've had good luck with this PVC because the joint is glued and it doesn't cup. I've placed another 3 3/4 inch piece on the table to help support the piece as I nail the corner together. Okay, there's 1 corner board, 3 more to go, and I think we'll call it a day. We'll finish it up tomorrow. Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day. The rains have stopped and I was able to complete sheathing the roof, and now I'm starting the first step of shingling, which is to install this drip edge, which will support the edge of the shingles. Next, I cover the plywood with felt paper, often called tar paper. For our roof shingles, we're using a standard 3-tab shingle. Every shingle package comes with detailed information on how to install these. It's a cinch. It only takes about an hour to finish a side like this. Well, now I'm ready to trim out the front of the building, and that starts with the corner boards, which I made yesterday. I've run a bead of caulking down the edge of the side that's going to attach to the MDO board. You can see the top is cut at a slope, it slips under the rake, nice and tight, and I'll nail it in place. Now I want to take the time to treat these edges with the paint because I don't want to have to cut around the shingles later. It's a lot easier to do this now. These pieces on each side of the door make up the door casings. The windows next. That's nice and plumb. Now this piece is called a water table. It's about a 9-inch wide piece and it really dresses up the shed. Well, now for one of the most satisfying jobs, which is to shingle the front of this building with white cedar shingles. The coursing or the exposure of each course will be about 5 inches, and I can adjust that slightly so that I'll end up with a full course under the window. You'll notice that I'm setting the shingles on a straight edge, and that makes it easy to line them up and make them level because the straight edge is level. 2 galvanized 5-penny nails per shingle, about a 1/2 inch from the edge. I like to use a block plane or a utility knife to treat the edges of the shingles so that I get a nice tight joint, because they will shrink over time. As I lay the shingles in, I want to make sure that I cover all the joints by at least 1 inch, and I never want a joint to align within 3 courses. All right, it's coming along, but it's starting to get dark, so I won't be able to finish the shingling today. But oh yeah, I got a door to make. Our door is made up of nothing more than tongue and groove cedar. Has a smooth side out. We will be painting that. Rough side faces the inside, where I've installed these 3 cross pieces of 1x6, attached it with screws, and then I have this diagonal brace. Now here I'm cutting an opening for a window. Now here's a frame that I'm making for the window, more of that PVC stock. I've rabbited the back side and I've chamfered the outside edges. I'm gluing and nailing the corners together. There'll be a frame on each side of the door to hold the window in place. Before I set that frame on the outside of the door, I want to put a nice bead of caulking along the top and a little thin bead along the sides, just to adhere it to the door. And I'll secure it with some 1¼ inch brads, making sure that it's perfectly square. With the door flipped over, I simply drop the window into the frame that I made on the front side. And here's another frame which I'll attach with some screws, so if we ever have to remove the window, it'll be easy. All right, that does it. Tomorrow we'll hang the door. Well, the rain finally stopped, and we were able to complete the sidewall shingling, put on a coat of stain, finish up painting the trim, install this window sash, and I hung the door using some nice period hinges and made a latch out of the same PVC material that I used for the trim. So the shed is now ready for the garden tools, the lawnmower, the snowblower, the lawn furniture. Of course, that is if the kids don't take it over. This was a fun project to build, the storage shed. Now let me show you what we're going to build next time. We call it a wall-hung console. It was inspired by a custom-made piece that we found in a designer showcase house. Made out of mahogany, it's great in a narrow hall where leg space is at a premium. It's a good place to display a lamp, perhaps some candlesticks, or a vase of pretty flowers. It's a smart piece that's attractive and fun to build. That'll be next time, right here in the new Yankee workshop.